The Newbery Award book from 2007 that I chose was called The Higher Power of Lucky by Susan Patron. It was illustrated by Matt Phelan, and it's a fiction book, and it's appropriate for ages around 9 to 12 years old. This book is about a 10-year-old girl who lives in a tiny little town in the desert of California called Hardpan, population 43. Her mother passed away a few years earlier, and her dad doesn't really have anything to do with her. So once her mother died, he called her his first wife in France and asked her to come be Lucky's guardian. Her name was Bridget, and they're like best friends. Throughout the book, it really describes how adventurous Lucky is. She eavesdrops on some conversations about how people they hit rock bottom and then they are trying to find their higher power. So Lucky's kind of on this quest to find her higher power. Talks about her going on adventures with her friends Lincoln and Miles. There were a few mishaps that happened throughout the story. Lucky breaks one of Bridget's grinders, and one day Lucky finds Bridget's passport and she's taking some online courses. So it kind of looks like she's heading back to France, and Lucky's just thinking, wow, my guardian is just going to leave me. She thinks that she's hit rock bottom. Her only way to escape is to run away. So one day they were getting ready to leave school early because of this big dust storm coming. So Lucky thinks this is the perfect time for her to run away. When she gets home, Bridget's not there, so she packs up her survival book bag and she heads out to the dugouts out in the desert. Her loyal dog, HMS Beagle, goes with her, and on the way, they find one of her friends, Miles, who's 5. He got lost on his way back to his house during the storm, so they hide out in the dugouts. Once the storm passes, their other friend Lincoln ends up finding them there. He just knew they would be there. And then the rest of the town shows up to bring Lucky back home. Before she surrenders to go back home, she had something she needed to do. She brought her mother's ashes with her, so she spread those in the wind in the desert. She goes back home with Bridget, and Bridget explains that her passport was out because she was planning on adopting Lucky, and she's been taking some online courses for restaurant management so she can open up her own restaurant in Hardpan. Everything ends perfectly for Lucky. The illustrations in this book are small. They look like little pencil sketchings like that. Every couple of pages there's a little sketch, and it usually is pictures of the characters themselves. I thought this book was really enjoyable to read. It was fun. It had a little humor in it. I think this would be a good book for elementary students to read because I think they can relate to it pretty well. Whether they've lost a parent themselves or they have to rely on government assistance like Lucky did. It's ways for children to relate, and if they can't relate that way, it's just a fun book to read. The activity that I chose was for students to track the weather for a week at their location. In this book, it talks a lot about how it's really hot, it's the desert, they're having this big dust storm, so it's really windy and dusty. This would be something they could do individually, or they could do it as a whole group activity.